This is Suit Up Sports.
Suit Up Sports.
Where opinions are as sharp as a tailored suit. No fluff, no gimmicks, just unfiltered, hard-hitting takes on sports and a whole lot more. It's time to suit up. Now here's your host, DJ the Suit Stout.
Welcome to Suit Up Sports. I'm DJ the Suit Stout, along with 10-year NFL vet Frank Garcia. Frank, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, DJ. It's been a great weekend of sports, kids sports on Sunday. I don't know why they do it, but they do. Saturday night was great. Some good games. We found out a lot about college football. Yeah. And the Panthers get a win. Good weekend for sports for, the Carolinians.
No doubt. The Panthers now have won 2 or 3 games. That debacle in New England doesn't look quite as bad now after we see New England and Drake May go in and beat the Buffalo Bills in overtime. And Drake May just continues to improve every week. And I know that him being a local boy that you and I have coached against when he grew up, and obviously him being a Tar Heel, a lot of people around here still are kind of quasi-Patriot fans now, hoping that he does well. And all he keeps doing is kicking butt. Panthers, though, what a win. And Panthers seem to do this most games where we seem to feel every emotion possible to man. So there's
the life of a Panther fan.
Yeah, the life of a Panther fan. So the first half, for instance, there's the fire this guy, fire that guy, this guy sucks. And then in the second half, we were like, okay, wait a minute. And that's the problem with the Panthers is the lack of consistency, which we talked about a lot last week. But this game epitomizes that. The team comes out against the Dolphins, a team that we both felt, whether you picked them or I picked them, we both felt this should be a good game and was definitely a game the Panthers could win. And the next thing we know, Bryce drops a ball, which is still a problem. And then he throws an interception and we're down 17-0. We still can't guard a tight end. Waller looked like he just went and did whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted. And we weren't within 10 yards of him, it seemed, most of the time. So a lot of the same problems that we've seen when the Panthers have looked really bad, showed their ugly heads early on in the first half. And then in the second half, whatever adjustments Evero made on defense, because listen, I've said I think he'll be the first coach to be fired during this season. And after giving up 42 unanswered points to the Patriots and then giving up 17 straight points to the Dolphins, I thought there's no way that he would survive his job today. And the second half, and I asked you this, and I want you to talk about it because I think it's interesting. When you and I sat down for a couple drinks after the game, I asked you, Frank, what did you see that he did differently in the second half that shut down the tight ends killing us? Mm-hmm. And why doesn't he do that more often, knowing the fact that tight ends have been killing us for years?
Right. And, I think a lot of times when you understand game plans as you prepare for your opponent each and every week, you go into a game wanting to stop what you think they're going to do well, or at least wanting to slow it down. What did we think the Dolphins were going to be able to come in and do better than, maybe some of the other opponents? That was going to be their number one thing, was run the football. Mm-hmm. Achane was going to be a guy that we have to stop. And for the most part, we did. We took care of him. Take carry 16 yards.
We held the Dolphins to 19 yards rushing.
So, you asked what the difference.
No, I'm just saying, that's your point.
Yeah, we held. Yeah. You asked what the difference is that in the first half, we said we are going to take your run away. We're going to load the box. We're going to make sure we drop the safety in. And if you want to use play action to beat us, then you're going to have to do that. And they did. Mm-hmm. That's what the Dolphins were able to do in that first half. And they had that seam wide open most of the time because, when you're stuffing the box and you're playing downhill, trying to stop the run, that play action, you're susceptible. And our linebackers are more one-dimensional. So either you're going to tell them to stop the run and you're going to give up those seam passes to a tight end, or we're going to say, hey, we got to drop back in coverage and we're going to give up the run. Most coaches will tell you we're going to allow the pass to, methodically move down the field because more bad things are going to happen. You might get bigger chunk plays, but you're not going to beat us by throwing 8-yard, 10-yard passes the entire game because we're going to get a tip pass, we're going to get a sack, whatever it might be. Where you will beat us is if we line up and you just run the ball down our throats because we can't stop that. right? So the Panthers decided to be a one-dimensional team in the first half. And at halftime, it felt like they made the adjustments. Okay, now we feel like we've got them out of their run game. Let's start bracketing or playing a little bit softer in coverage, getting our linebackers a little bit more depth to help take away that tight end and force them to maybe start running the ball. And I think that's the tale of two halves right there for the Panthers defense, because when you have guys that aren't really great at they're not the best, most rounded football players, you're going to have to say, okay, we're going to do this, or we're going to do
linebackers.
Our linebackers, or our defense in general,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're going to be a one-dimensional defense, and when we do it, we have to sell out doing it, right? Where this is work. So as a coordinator, it puts a lot of pressure on me to call the right defense for the right situation in the right play, because I'm not going to have the players that can just say, line up in this base defense and let's go out and play. And our athletes are going to be able to match up with your athletes. We have to physically move and remove personnel on and off the field to be able to do those things. And, that's a challenge for a coordinator. So, but they did a really good job in the second half, making those adjustments. This is what they're doing. This is what we're going to take away, right? When you're leading, a football game, all right, you're not going to really make adjustments, are you? You know why? Because you're leading. You're going to keep doing what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
When you're losing a game is when you're going to have to say, okay, this is what we have to do differently in the second half. And if they're not able to readjust, then, we're going to be right in that game, because that's the way the Panthers were able to get back into the game, is by taking those plays away and allowing Bryce to start, making a little bit more plays. Dowdle to start running the ball. Dowdle ran the ball incredibly well.
Yeah.
202 over
6 yards. Yeah.
Yeah. 206 yards. He's probably one of the best performances in Panther history.
It's the second best behind Jonathan Stewart, if I'm not mistaken.
So, I mean, to win games, you're going to have performances like that, because, for the most part, I just don't feel like Bryce Young is going to be able to take over a game, even though he didn't make the big mistake and he made some really, really good passes. And the Panthers had some very timely drives when it counted. That's what you're expecting from your first rounder, but you're expecting it more consistently.
No question.
You want those things to happen throughout the course of the game, and you want those things to happen when you're on the road. The Panthers at home are a completely different team. Why that is, we can talk about that as we go on. You can ask me some questions if you want, but if the Panthers right now, if they're playing at home, Bryce Young is over he's over a 500 quarterback. At what he's won of the games that he's won, of the 8 games that he's won as starting quarterback, 7 of them have been now at home.
And let me give you a stat, because there are some things I want to ask you about that still drive me crazy with what we saw yesterday. But I want to start off talking about the positives, because there were a lot of positives, and I do want to give credit, because I think one thing that we do on the show is we do try to be very objective when it comes to keeping things real, but also giving credit where it's due.
Yep.
And let's start with Bryce, because for the game he was 19 of 30, 198 yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception, and a fumble. But after in the second half, after being down 17-0, or really after just being down 17-0, he was 17 for 26, 165 yards and 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, no fumbles, for 108.7 quarterback rating. So that leads to the fact of what you just talked about with Bryce, where that's why it's so frustrating with Bryce, because we see when he does get it going. The touchdown pass to Leggett, not only was it a perfect pass, Leggett finally makes a play, and that was a hell of a catch. The fourth down throw to Jimmy Horn Jr., again, another one of these rookie draft choices coming up big on a fourth down play that was huge in the game. And that was not only a great pass by Bryce, but a great catch where Horn goes up and gets it. We saw Etienne, who got more carries yesterday. He actually had 4 carries for 22 yards, and so that's more than Shane had. And but he had the big run for the first down at the end, when we were going on the touchdown drive. So it was a huge run where he broke a couple tackles and got the first down. You mentioned Dowdle, 23 rushes, 206 yards, and a touchdown. And you and I watch pretty much every Panther game together. And Mark Schlereth usually is the color analyst for the Panther games, because we normally get their third or fourth team. First of all,
and I think Mark, just to say something about Mark Schlereth knows this game as well as anybody. I think when you look at the words that he's saying, him and Greg Olson, I think, are two of the best. I also like Troy Aikman. Can't stand Tony Romo. I think Tony Romo is probably the biggest goofball out there when it comes to managing a football game, and they understand why, that the Dallas Cowboys couldn't win with him at quarterback because he doesn't understand situations. Number two is that he always tries to be funny in the dumbest situation, and he has a tough partner to be funny with. I think Schlereth does a very good job of analyzing the game and keeping it real. Right, he's going to tell you exactly what he sees as a former player who's won 2 Super Bowls, who's been to Pro Bowls. He had 19 surgeries and is a really good, damn good player.
Well, normally Schlereth for some reason just gets on my nerves.
Yeah.
Maybe it's usually because
he's honest
and the
he's
Panthers
truthful.
are losing.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why. But yesterday, even when we were losing, he brought up some great points that I thought were spot on, and the Panthers actually did it. And I'll give you that. First of all, he said that when he was on the Denver Broncos and won 2 Super Bowls, they had 6 plays on offense they ran. 6. Now, they ran them out of different formations, right? But he said, we knew the 6 things we did well, and we did them out of different formations, but that's what we were going to do. And right now, the Panthers, I've watched every one of their games, and they run the ball very well off the right side. And I don't know why they don't continue to do that. And right when he said it, coming in the second half, it seemed like the Panthers must have heard him because we start hitting that right side. And Dowdle, I think the first time we do it, he breaks a 55-yard run. So that was one thing that I thought he nailed. Second thing I thought he nailed was after Waller's 3rd catch, and he's just torching us. He's got 3 catches, 2 touchdowns, 65 yards, all, very quick it seemed. He goes, I don't understand what the Panthers are doing here. Like, okay, I get what you just pointed out about the run and all that stuff, but this guy's killing you and no one's near him. So you've got to double team him, or you've got to change your scheme to take that away right now, because if not, the Dolphins are going to do it all day long. In the second half, Evero made that tweak and it worked. And listen, I thought Roseboom by far had his best game as a Panther yesterday. He seemed to be all over the place. I think he had 5 or 6 tackles, 4 assists. Coverage is not his thing, and you just alluded to that. For Wallace the same way. But I thought Roseboom had his best game of the year. But I thought Schlereth was spot on. I also do want to give a shout out to Eric Collins, because those of you who watch the Hornets on TV, and I do, I'm a big Hornet fan. I love Eric Collins. He makes the games, and look, calling Hornet games ain't easy. Number one, you have to learn the new roster every day because none of their stars seem to play. And number 2, we're losing most of the time. Yet he still makes it a fun watch, as does Del Curry. Well, yesterday was Eric's first game calling, in the NFL this year, as far as I know, maybe ever, for the NFL. And I thought that he was great. And I thought that when the Dolphins were kicking our butt, if you were a Dolphin fan, you would have liked the way he called the game. And I thought when the Panthers made it a comeback and got in the game and took the lead, if you're a Panther fan, he had you pumped up. And I think that's the key to what a good play-by-play guy does. And I've had a lot of great play-by-play guys work for me over the years. And I just think he does a great job. But I thought Schlereth did a really good job yesterday. And it did seem that the things he pointed out were spot on. And when the Panthers fixed them, it seemed to work. So, I think the point to take out of that is, the Panthers, it's okay to simplify what you do and stay with it. You coach Charlotte Catholic High School, and I don't think would argue with me on this. When you guys play good teams, normally they have the better athletes. They've got the guys going to these Division I schools. They're bigger, stronger, faster. Yet you guys seem to be in every game. You've won 6 championships in the past 10 years or whatever it is, because you know what you can do. You know what scheme you do well, and you stick with it. And I think that the Panthers could take a lesson. And I think maybe Canales saw that in the second half, where it did seem to simplify things. And when you run the ball like that, it does open up everything else that he wants to do. Tet had another great game. I mean, that dude catches pretty much everything. No drops yesterday, which I was pumped about. We saw Leggett with the great touchdown catch. He had another great big
nice
catch
crossing route
on a crossing route where
yeah.
he got both feet in bounds. I think he got him in 4 times.
Luckily, the ball was thrown a little earlier.
Yeah.
He still might have struggled.
But he did get him in bounds. And then, Bryson Tremaine, it seems every game he makes one big catch, and he had a big one yesterday. And then our tight ends, look, Mitchell Evans, the rookie out of Notre Dame, we both liked him a lot when the Panthers drafted him. And when we had the draft gurus that we've had on the show leading into the draft, or excuse me, after the draft, I think every one of them said that getting him in the 6th round or whatever round we got him in is going to be a steal, and the kid can play. And that's 2 games in a row with a touchdown.
Well, not only can he catch the ball, right? Which I think everybody, when they look at tight ends, they think that, this guy, he needs to be a difference maker. He needs to be a Tony Gonzalez. He needs to be a Travis Kelce. He needs to stretch the field. Yeah, and he does. But the difference between why Tony Gonzalez, Travis Kelce, and Antonio Gates, some of these great tight ends, were really good is not only could they catch the ball, they could block the run very well, right? And when you look at the teams that these guys have played on, you look at where this kid is what he's doing well. He's probably as good of a run blocker as you're going to find at that tight end position, right? And the reason why we have 206 yards is because a lot of times when you look at offensive lines, they're going to take a lot of the blame. They're going to get a lot of the credit for when teams run the ball well, right? Because that's what you're expecting them to do.
Yep.
But I'm going to tell you the key to running the football well, when you have good running teams, there's 2 things. You better have a good tight end that can block, and you better have a fullback that can have the vision of your eyes so that the running back can make the plays. Ask Emmitt Smith who his most valuable teammate was. It's going to be Moose Johnson, right? The offensive line is going to get credit, but that's what they're supposed to do, right? So when you look at Terrell Davis, going back to Schloess days, Howard Griffin, right? He was a Pro Bowl fullback that was able to open up holes for TD, Terrell Davis. They also had a tight end and Sharp that could block his ass off, right? Yep. So when you're going to be a good running team and you want to run those 6 plays that you pointed out to, and you want to be efficient and you want to be successful, there's a timing that takes place between the line and the running back. As a lineman, I'm blocking a guy. I don't have eyes in the back of my head, but I know when I get a reaction, the ball is coming a certain way, right? And then I can emphasize that move, because I've seen it over and over and over again, right? We had inside zone, we had outside zone, we had stretch, we had some counters, we had some different plays that would run. But when we know that we're going to run those plays, I know what the running back is seeing because he sees the defense the same way I do. Emmitt Smith had some of the best vision, and Terrell Davis as well, as any running back you're going to find ever, right? And that's why they're successful. But they only ran a handful of plays, right? They only ran 5 or 6 running plays that they would run, and like Schloeth alluded to. At Charlotte Catholic, same thing. Football is not rocket science, right? Sometimes you have to overcome coaching of trying to win games and put you in the perfect play call versus lining up and doing what you do well better than what everybody else does well. And if I can do those things over and over, I create consistency and I create a feeling and I can create a synergy that takes place where we are starting to dominate and those body blows start wearing you down. That's where the Dallas Cowboys were successful. They ran the ISO, they ran the lead, they ran the toss, but they all knew exactly what they were supposed to do. They knew the defenses that they were going to play because there's only about a handful that you're going to see that at fronts that you're going to have. Now, the guys on the other side are going to be a little challenging and different, right? And the ones that play well are going to have guys that match up well against double teams or can run whatever the defense you're running. But when you're running a zone play, right, you're looking for a center that can reach a guy and make a cut in the defense where everybody else is kind of getting pushed sideways, where he can put his foot in the ground and plant and drive. And that's what Daddle did yesterday. They ran about a handful of plays to the right side that they had huge success. You know why? Because the guys on the right side aligned with the running back that was the same vision. So when they had those reactions, they could hit those holes.
And, the Panthers don't use a fullback. So what you're saying basically is how Evans and Tremble blocked.
That's right.
And even though they're not lining up as a fullback, they're still
capturing and getting push to be able to capture that line of scrimmage, so the running back can stay on his course and either press the hole if the line, with their read, or make that cut when that guy flows. So it's a really simple concept if you have those players that are really good players. Shannon Sharp, Great player. He could hold the point at the line of scrimmage. He could cut off on the backside. A lot of times in the NFL, you'll have 9 guys block. That tight end just doesn't make his block, and bam. I mean, you're looking at a backside guy running him down because he didn't make the cutoff block. These guys are fierce blockers, and that's why we've had success running the football. The challenge is are we going to be able to do that against the better teams, right? Because the Miami Dolphins up front are just an average bunch of group of guys. And are we going to be able to do it if you played the Philadelphia Eagles? Are you going to be able to do that if you played the Kansas City Chiefs? Are you going to do that if you're playing these more run-stout defenses and get that same type of movement? That's your best chance, right, to at least try those things and then have some patience with those things. But the Panthers yesterday had a lot of success doing that, and it's the reason why at the end of the game they were able to move the ball methodically down the field with their play action and with their passing game, is because the body blows finally wore out.
Well, and again, I want to give Canales credit on this, because we talked the last couple of weeks about how, our running backs, Chuba Hubbard or Dowd or whoever, we're getting, maybe like Chuba, I think, had 13 carries, 14 carries, never more than that. And yesterday, Dowdle got 23 rushes, and we said that a lot of the reason that they weren't getting that was because we were getting our butts whooped, and you had to throw the ball. But even down 17-0 yesterday, when we started our comeback, it was a running game that got it going, and Canales stuck with it and was patient with it. And then that opened up the passing game for Bryce. And I think that's why Bryce in the second half was a lot better than he was in the first half.
Let me say this. Most offensive coordinators and offensive coaches don't want to run the football. They don't want to run the football. They have to run the football. It's out of necessity. They want to be creative. They want to spread you out. They want to attack downfield. They want to have chunk plays. They want to have big yards and those type of things. If you don't have those type of players or that type of quarterback pulling the trigger, you can want to do that all you want, but that's not what gives you the best chance to win.
Right.
Right. And I think Canales, his brain works is we're going to be aggressive. Yesterday, he took a step back, and I give him credit because he understood that this is where our chunk plays were coming from, averaging 9 yards a carry. That's more than Bryce does passing the football, by the way, right?
Yeah.
Averaging 9 yards a carry. You can do it both ways, but you have to be able to keep defenses off balance. Sometimes you have to run the ball when they expect pass. Sometimes you have to pass the ball when they expect run. You have to line up in different formations where in past you've thrown the ball. Now you have to come up with a game that's going to match your passing game, a running game that's going to match your passing game, so that you can't tell the difference between these formations when we're going to pass or when we're going to run.
Yep.
Right. And yesterday, that the fact that they were playing the Miami Dolphins, they didn't match up well against us in the run game because we wore them out on that right side.
We sure did. And let's talk Bryce Young for a minute, because, I gave you his stats, and he had a great second half. Again, the fumble, those have got to stop. I mean, he made a bad decision on the RPO. He should have given Dowd the ball in the handoff. He decided to keep it. The Chubb was right there on him, and he just dropped the ball without even getting touched. The interception, he threw it off, and while he was running, so he didn't get to plant his feet, sailed it a little bit. But let me give you some stats about Bryce Young that are going to surprise you. They surprised me, at least.
Okay.
Especially when you talked about when you read his record as a quarterback when it comes to wins and losses. And I think you said he's 1-15 on the road, and we talked about that. And then his other 6 wins or whatever it was are at home.
7 wins.
And so listen to this stat. This
7-11 at home. He was 1-15 on the road.
Well, this surprised me. Bryce is tied for 4th in the NFL since 2023, since he came into the league, with 7 game-winning drives, and he's tied for 4th. Now, there's a lot of guys tied there, so totally he's probably the 9th guy. But the guys ahead of him are Mahomes, Goff, Hurts, Geno Smith, Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, Stafford, and Darnold. But 7 game-winning drives. Now,
and out of how many games? I didn't hear the first part. Out of all his games that he's played,
out
of the 36 games.
Well, since 2023, he has 7 game-winning drives, which ties him for 4th in the NFL. So, number one, that surprised me. Now, we can look at it and go, well, they're behind a lot. And this is also, if I'm not mistaken, the first game the Panthers have won with Bryce at quarterback when they've turned the ball over 2 or more times. So, that's why when they're down 17-0, they fumble through a pick, every Panther fan's going, oh, here we go again. So they overcame that yesterday. Bryce has shown the propensity to lead his team to victory, especially at home when down. And even yesterday, when we come down, we get the touchdown, and then just like that, we give up the Waddle 42-yard pass for a touchdown, and we go, here we go again. Bryce brought him right back down the field again, and Dowdle ran the ball, and Etienne ran the ball, but Bryce had some great throws, a big fourth down throw. So let's talk about Bryce for a minute.
Well, I mean, let me just, I'm thinking of something as you're talking about his record and his road wins and road losses, and I never really had thought about this, but we've always blamed Bryce Young because ultimately he's going to get the credit or the blame for the wins and losses, right? So just as a head coach.
Mm-hmm.
But what if it's not the offense on the road? What's the one thing that we say, or the two things that we have to bring with us on the road if we're going to be a good football
running
team?
game?
Your defense and your special teams has to show up on the road if you're going to win. What's their record on the road? 1-15. What's their record at home? Right?
Yeah.
Defense is going to be, why don't you have to pack your special? You still have to play defense at home, but you're going to have the crowd noise on your side to help complement a poor defense at home. They're going to be louder. They're going to be, they're going to be more into the game. You're going to play with more emotion at home. What if it's not the offense as much as it is the defense that is costing Bryce these wins or losses? Because on the road, they're terrible, right? On the road, this team is terrible. It's a terrible team. At home, they're above 500 since Bryce has been there. So what if I say that it's not just Bryce and what his record is on the road, even though he's 1-15, we're going to sit and blame him. What if those losses have been because we have one of the worst defenses in the NFL?
Well, I will say this I think you're right. And to blame all that on Bryce, I think is unfair. Last week would be a good example. We go down, score a touchdown the first drive of the game. Then we give up 42 unanswered points, including a punt return for a touchdown.
Special teams.
But the offense then didn't do anything.
Special teams are indictment on who? Who plays special teams mostly?
Your backup?
Defensive players.
So in your
defensive players. Our defensive players are so bad, especially our backups.
Well, I want to say our defense, honestly, this year
at home they have been.
Well, yeah, on the road.
On the road they've been awful. DJ.
They've been bad. No, so
they've been awful.
I don't disagree with you. And
so at home they have the home field advantage. It's my point. They have home field advantage. They have the crowd noise behind them. They don't have to worry about, they have the advantage of getting off the ball because the offense is going to be. But when the offense is at home and everything's equal, right now the defense has got to be the big boys, right? They're getting pushed around.
Well, I want to say this about the defense because, Dan Morgan, and we've talked about this a bunch. Dan Morgan 2 years ago used traded Brian Burns, used that money that freed up and whatever money they had under the cap to fix the offensive line, and he did. The offensive line is much better than it had been before that. This year, we saw him use the money to bring in a lot of players on defense as well as the draft. Now, we wondered after the first game when they gave up 200 yards rushing to the Jags. And I know two of those were two long runs by Etienne, but still they gave up a lot of yards rushing to the Jags. Then they go to Arizona, they go to Arizona and they hold them to about 103 yards rushing, if I'm not mistaken. Since that first game, they've seemed to have at least figured something out against the run. You hold a Shane to 19 yards rushing, you got to give him credit to that. You got to. I mean, that's doing something because the Shane's one of the best running backs in the NFL.
And last week they held the same thing. That's what at home. Both games at home.
Yep. And
the week before against the Patriots, what happened?
Well, the Patriots, the special teams
killed us, but they still ran the ball all over us.
Well, and again, that was a debacle. I mean, that game was a debacle. But if you look at the overall painting of what our defense is doing, we are much better against the run this year than we were last year.
At home.
Well, just as an overall, definitely
at home.
Definitely at home.
I'm not willing to say that on the road.
Well, when you keep Arizona, who has three good running backs, to 100 yards rushing, I think that's pretty good. Now, you could say, well, Arizona was up 20 to whatever, but they were going to run the ball. And then you could say, well, you knew we were going to run the ball. So there's arguments to be made on either side. I just want to give credit to this defense because I do think that Bobby Brown and Derek Brown, Scorton, by the way, we talk about these young players and let's give Morgan some credit on the draft too, because the draft this year, these players are playing and they're making plays. Scorton yesterday was the highest rated player on defense with an 89.6, and he was making plays. Yesterday was the first game where I felt that he wasn't thinking so much and he was just reacting. We saw him make back-to-back plays where he stopped them in the backfield. And so I got to give these rookies on defense a lot of credit too. Ransom got in yesterday, played very well in my opinion. I know he gave up, I think, 1 or 2 catches, but he played well. And then on offense, obviously, Tet, Evans, Horn with a big catch. So we see some fruits of what Morgan has done in the free agency and the draft, and I think we have to give credit to that. We're still a long way away, and when the cupboard was as bare as this cupboard was, it's going to take time to do exactly what you just said and have the depth to where your special team guys can be actually good players and not just the 53. The last guys on the roster. Special teams yesterday, from a defensive standpoint, our special teams covered very well. We still don't get anything on kickoff and punt returns. I mean, we get nothing. We might as well just down the damn ball. But I do want to give credit to the defense because, especially in the second half, you do see what they're trying to do. And when he made the adjustment to take out the tight ends, and I want to ask you one more question about that. So you're saying that, and we play the Cowboys next at home. Okay. Cowboys are scoring points as well as anybody in the NFL right now. Even without CeeDee Lamb, they put up 36 yesterday against a bad Jets team, but they're putting up points against the Giants, who everyone thinks has a pretty good defense. They put up 44 points. So they're going to score points. Dak Prescott's playing great right now. Their offensive line's playing solid, even with some injuries. So they come to town this week. And so their running game is okay. Jerome Williams is okay. But it's definitely not a Shane. It's definitely not Bijan Robinson. So in a game like that, and their tight end Ferguson did really good tight end. So normally we would go, oh God, Ferguson's going to kill us. Do you start this game against the Cowboys the way we finished it with the Dolphins and let our linebackers and like you said, play a little softer, or do you come out and just see how it goes?
You stop the run.
Stop the run first.
You have to stop the run.
Yeah.
I mean, the games that they've won, they've done what? They've stopped the run at both games at home. And let me make this point with you about the running game, right? Because, Dom Capers was a very, very, very good defensive coordinator, maybe one of the best in the NFL all time. With the zone blitz, he was with the Steelers, obviously, when he came here with the Panthers, and, the defenses that we had in the mid 90s with 96, 97, going to the NFC Championship, beating the Dallas Cowboys, those types of things, right? The stats that he gave us every meeting, it's like ingrained in my head. And it's been 30 years since I've heard him speak, in front of but they're ingrained in my head because he would do it every single time. There's key stats to every game, right? The key stats, the team that rushes the ball 30 play, doesn't matter the amount of yards you get necessarily, but if you're rushing the ball 30 times, right? This team is going to win 70% of the time. If you don't turn the ball 2 or less turnovers than your opponent, right? So if they have 4 and we have 2, that's 2, it's 2 or less, right?
Yep.
The 40% or 75% of the time, right? Big plays, right? Big plays, we have to limit them and we have to get, right? 2, which a big play in the passing game is 20 plus yards. A big play in the running game is 15 yards or more, right? 25 in the passing game, 15 or more in the running game. We have to limit those or get those, and be plus on those sides, right? And then finally, drive start average, right? Those were the big things in football games that matter.
I mean where you started your drive from?
Your drive start average. Yeah. So back then, most of the balls weren't going through the end zone.
You start on the 20.
You start on the 20, right? Now, but those matter because those percentages, from a team starting at the 20-yard line go significantly down versus when you start at the 30 or 35.
Yep.
Right. It's almost like 10% less at the 20. Right. The times that you score field goals versus touchdowns, et cetera, and those stats all kind of line up. There's a book that shows you these things and what they are league wide with teams that play in the NFL. Right. And those are key stats in every game. So running the football at 4 yards a carry when you're knowing you're going to run it 33 times, 34 times is going to be significantly, more successful. Same thing when Cam Newton was quarterback, right? Cam Newton, when this team ran the ball, if we could go back and look at the stats when he was quarterback, when this team ran the ball 30 plus times, you look at his win average versus when he had to throw it 30 times, right? It was night and day. His honey spot was about 22, 23 passes, 24, but rushing the ball over 30 times, this team, they went 15-1, 16, whatever the record was when they went to the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
They were killing people running the football. So teams that run the ball don't have to have 200 yards in order to be successful. 30 plus times is the bigger number that counts. So I want you to remember
yesterday
that.
We were right around that because Dowdle had 23 rushes. Etienne had 4 for 27. Horn had 2 rushes.
Yep.
And then I think Bryce had 1 or 2. So we were right around that 30.
Right around 30. That's the honey spot. So teams that rush the ball 30 plus times. I looked at the Panthers game against the Patriots. They only run it for 107, but how many times they rush for? 35.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the number yards per carry isn't going to be, but those body blows are going to be the difference.
It also helps keep your defense off the
That's
field
right.
where they're getting rested.
It reduces time. It keeps I control the clock, and then special teams obviously was a big factor in that game as well. You have to, the drive start average and the punt average, I think, was involved with this equation as well. But the analytics have changed a little bit because the amount of times people are going for it on fourth down are a lot greater now than it was then. So those have changed a little bit, but they're not going to be to the point where it's significantly greater or less when you do those things. But those are the key factors in winning football games.
Let me ask you this, and then I want to move on to some college football because we did learn a lot in college football this week, I think, about who's the real players and who's not, and then who are still kind of on the fence. But I do want to ask you one question before we leave the Panthers. Watching the game yesterday, what do you leave that game with feeling good about? Because we know what I feel good about. I've kind of rattled through it. But what do you feel good about going into that next week? Because I think that maybe that second half we found something on defense that we can at least fall back on when we need to, or whatever the scenario is. I felt like on defense with these young guys being all over the place, I feel like maybe they found something. The second half, we definitely found something with a running game, and this isn't to take anything away from Chuba. We both think Chuba's a damn good running back, but Dowdle just seemed to have a different gear yesterday, and he's going to be playing the Cowboys this weekend. He's already came out yesterday and said, they let me go. I was there 4 or 5 years. They know what I am. They let me go, and I can't wait to show them, and I guarantee you they're not looking forward to tackling me. What made you feel good about the game?
I don't like when players make it about them in that way, per se.
Well, he was asked the question.
I know. But I'm not a big fan of that. Whether it matters what I think or not really doesn't matter. But I like it more when, hey, listen, I'm coming to play, and I'm going to give them every reason to. We know that, right? He knows that. When you motivate another team like that and you give them chalkboard material,
yeah, I don't like that
right?
either.
They're going to say, okay, you've just made me play a lot harder by what you just said. I wasn't even thinking about you, Dowdle, but what you've done. But now you come in here and you're going to motivate me and to give me that. And you know what? I mean, at the end of the day, it's two alphas going against. You got to win your battles. You got to win your battles, right? Yep. So it probably doesn't mean a whole bunch, but I just don't like that as a coach. Maybe I did it more as a player, just because of the braggadociousness.
I think you just nailed it. If you come out and if he runs for 100 plus yards and he has a great game, then you go, man, he called a shot. But you're right. I'm not a big fan of bulletin board material. But what did you feel good?
So that being said, I mean, that was neither here nor there when I came to your question. I feel good about them running the football. I feel good about, our running game going in, staying at home. Against the Dallas Cowboys, who have a pretty good defense, but they've lost a lot, right? This isn't the same team that they've had. Their
defense is the weakest link on that team.
That's right. So, controlling the clock, keeping Bryce limited to 30 or less passes, I think is something we want to do. Getting Ted McMillan the ball. I think there's some synergy being developed there and some good chemistry being developed with Bryce and him. Having Leggett, make 2 big plays, hopefully will regain some confidence and maybe take away some of the foolishness and maybe understand that he has to be more focused and serious during the week to prepare and get ready for the games on Sunday. He can't just show up like he did in college and expect to just dominate on Sundays. He has to prepare to do those things. So hopefully he'll learn those things. I feel good about our tight ends, running the ball. But, overall, I like our running game. I like our offensive line. I like Bryce, handing the ball off versus trying to throw it 35 times and trying to win a game that way, because I don't think we're built like that. I don't think our play calling is built like that. I don't think our routes and the design of our offense is built like that. We are built as this offense and with this team is to run the football, use play action, and take some plays when they're given to us, depending on what the defense does, and make those changes and audibles. And at home, being able to communicate those things to young players, I think is effective. When we go on the road, I think those things challenge. On defense, hey, listen, we've at home, we're a stout defense stopping the run. Continue to do that. All right. Make sure that they are not going to run the ball and they're not going to breathe. You got 4 or 5 guys to the ball. Derek Brown has been playing his ass off in the interior. And when you can't run the ball up, it's just that when you're strong in the middle against the run, right, you're going to be a pretty good defense. Mm-hmm. Derek Brown, it makes them strong in the middle because he's able to maneuver guys and, make them bounce to the outside where speed of the defense is going to be able to get there. And, I think that's one thing the Panthers have done very well is control the interior pockets of the defensive line, or on the defensive side, when it comes to other teams' offensive line. So I feel good about that. Where I don't feel good about is our one-on-one coverage, down the field, Waddle, made a big play. I like our matchup against Pickens. When they with Horn, because it's size versus size. I hope there doesn't become chippiness because Pickens, can become a little chippy and maybe provoke some guys, but they don't have a whole lot on the offensive side that scares me, with their best receiver being out. So I feel pretty good about our chances against the Dallas Cowboys at home.
Well, I thought, like I said, the comeback,
build and develop off of those.
Exactly the comeback, the fight this team showed. Hopefully they can. We hope they were going to do that against the Patriots, and they flopped. Hopefully they can do that against Cowboys.
If I'm Canales, I'm reiterating that this is who we showed up as. This team down 17. This is who we're capable of being.
Yep.
Right. We need to prepare like we're going to play like we did in the second half. Mm-hmm. And that starts with preparation during the week. So hopefully that gives him some clout, some kind of a little bit of a punch to be able to say, we're going to do this during the week, but I have to continue to work and we have to continue to grow and build these things. But in order to do those things, we have to be physical during the week. And that those things are going to carry over to Sunday.
A few things that they got to fix. Number one, they're still having delayed games, and Canales took a couple of them on himself yesterday, which at home, which you're talking about, where communication should be easier, you can't have that. They had too many stupid penalties. Moten, who's been great for a long time here, I think had maybe one of his worst games ever as a Panther. He had some bad penalties. He gave up, I think, 2 sacks. So they got to figure out that delay of game crap and getting the plays on time. A couple of the delay games came after we had big plays. Mm-hmm. And that's the last thing I want to ask you, though, because then
that's usually going to happen after a big play.
But don't the really good offensive coordinators usually say they've got like 3 plays ahead? So like that they should be able.
There's a why for why you call plays, right? There's a reason why. And I think that's the challenge, to be honest with you, when you're a coach on the field versus a guy in the box. Right? A guy in the box has time to process, time to think. He has time to look over his card. When you're on the field, there's so many moving parts as a head coach that you're responsible for, decision-making, et cetera, et cetera. There's a couple of guys that have the ability to. Andy Reid is one of those guys, I feel like, but he still has a guy calling the plays. He just has input on those, and you see him in his mask calling those things.
Yeah, his Waffle House menu,
and his Waffle House menu, making those calls. But he's been doing it for 100 years. So
right.
He knows his offense better than anybody.
No doubt.
He knows what he's looking for. He's looking for certain things for the reason why he's going to call those things. When they're in this and when they do this, when this guy bites, this is the counter we have to that. He knows his offense better and inside out than anybody else, and he knows his personnel, right? Because he's handpicked those guys. Canales is still trying to figure out his personnel, it seems like, with moving parts, young players here, young players there, a guy that I don't know if I can count on with Leggett running this route. Do we really want to dial him up for this play, even though that's going to be the one that works? I don't know if I trust that, right? And anytime you can run the football, right? I mean, it makes it easier to just call a run than it would be to, try to create a pass where you're going to, clear out, run behind, et cetera. So Anytime you can run the ball, it's going to free up you as a play caller.
Well, and a lot of people have questioned, and I have, and you have, does Canales trust Bryce, and is that why we see some of the play calls we've seen on 3rd and 10s or whatever it may be? Yesterday, he let Bryce throw it when we were trying to run the clock out at the end of the game, which surprised me and a lot of other folks. Luckily, it turned out well, and Bryce completed it with the pass interference. But he did show some trust in Bryce there. So again, hopefully we see a lot more of the second half Panthers against the Cowboys for the entire game, and let's get some momentum building.
Put a complete game together, and this team,
because we haven't done that yet.
Yeah, this team is more like a 5.
Maybe against the Falcons.
They're more this team against better competition, has a chance if they play a whole game. I think the Falcons aren't a very good team.
I think they're good. I just think they didn't have a good day against
the Dolphins. Are probably one of the worst teams in the NFL.
I'll be very surprised if McDaniels isn't fired today.
So we have to be very conscientious of that as well.
No
Remember, when we're beating the tallest midget, we're not beating the 49ers or the Chiefs or Tampa Bay or some of these other teams. We're beating, the worst team at home, barely with a last second drive. So we have to be conscientious of that. But at least those things help build momentum for a team like Dallas that's coming in.
And
Dallas is going to be a better opponent.
No doubt. And we saw with Bryce last year when he came back from the benching, we saw when he got into his rhythm, we went on a nice run of even the games we didn't win, but we were in the game with Kansas City, Tampa Bay, Philadelphia. So maybe and hopefully we're going to see that same rhythm get going now that we're going to be in our 5th game, 6th game, whatever it is. But the Cowboys are definitely going to be a tougher opponent than what we face this week. But we'll take what we can get when we can get it. Let's go to college football. Another good week in college football that we did learn a lot about the pretenders and the contenders. I want to start off with Alabama, Vandy. Vandy's a scrappy team, and that quarterback just makes plays. He reminds me a lot of a Johnny Manziel or somebody like that, plays with his hair on fire. But Alabama stood the early blows, and at halftime we're going, man, like, is Vandy this good, or is Alabama against Georgia an anomaly? What's the deal? But
when the hype and the heart wears out, the better football players are going to prevail, right?
Yep.
And that's the tale of the difference between Alabama and Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's a scrappy team, and they played their asses off for one half of football, and probably even a little bit more. If Pavea had not fumbled that ball, going in to score, this might be a different story, because that hype and heart might last a little bit longer. It's kind of a deflator when Vanderbilt went out there and he dropped that ball, and they didn't seem to recover, from that point on, and that's where Alabama started to insert, their physicality on Vanderbilt. They were just bigger, a little bit. Vanderbilt has done a very good job, and Vanderbilt is going to win a lot of games because
and that's not an easy place to win.
And Alabama is not an easy place to win, and they are coming off of a huge win against Georgia. It seems like they are headed back in the right direction, and they've got some momentum too, which is the reason why they'll probably be higher in the polls this week. Vanderbilt, I think, fought their asses off after Pavea talking, all year, he's a guy that just is gonna. That's the way he plays. His hair on fire. Again, I don't like it necessarily, but. That's they gave all they can, but Alabama was just bigger, faster, stronger, longer.
Yeah, I think they figured it out, and getting the running back against Georgia, and he just ran all over Vandy. Alabama's going to be there, I have a feeling, at the end. They seem to have figured it out.
Well, let me say this about Alabama as well. What's really helped them, I think, turn the corner as well is their quarterback. I've told you last week, there's certain things that make my eyes jump, and when I saw that ball come out of his hand, he has a different, gauge or different arm than most people. He's
got a cannon.
He has a cannon of an arm, and he's starting to get a little bit more comfortable with the offense and make the plays when they're presented.
Miami and Florida State, we remember back in the days when those games were always great. Florida State laid an egg at Virginia, so we were hoping that wasn't the real Florida State and that this game was going to be a great game. We both think that Miami, if not the best team in the country, or definitely in the top 2 or 3, and Miami goes into Florida State, and the same reasons why they've won every game so far just continued to prove itself, which is They have a great offensive line. They have a great defensive line. They have a quarterback who's playing as well as any quarterback in the country. They've got good guys at skill position. They just seem to have it going on all cylinders right now. And the final score was closer than the game. Miami brought it to them. And I think Miami
28-3 going into the third quarter.
Yep.
Right. 28-3 game was over. And give credit to Florida State for fighting their way back into the game. They had some things go their way, scored 19 points to make it a respectable game, but they didn't really have a chance to win. And we knew that game was over about 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. They scored late to bring it to 22. But, Miami, I feel like is, and I've seen Ohio State play a couple of times now. I've seen Georgia play a couple of times, seen Bama play a couple of times. I've not seen Texas A&M play as much as I'd like to, so they would be the one team that I'm not really sure about, from my eyeballs and seeing, who could. But Miami is the best team in the country.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't argue with you. And honestly, look at their resume right now. There's no one that has even close to that resume. I mean, they've beaten ranked team. So
Cristobal has them on all cylinders right
does.
Now. What's happened to Miami in past is they let one slide down their leg every now and then when they're not supposed to. They don't show up and they play down to their opponent. This team, I feel like, is, with their quarterback, is Carson Beck is a guy that is not going to allow that to happen. And that's where he brings a little bit of a swagger to this team. And that confidence from winning from what he was at when he was with Georgia, playing for national championships. This is what it takes. This is how we're going to be different. And I'm not going to allow mediocrity to seep in on the offensive side. I think Miami's defense up front, especially, is by far the best in the game. They can rush the passer. They can play side to side. They can, stop the run. And it's going to be tough sledding when you take on this Miami Hurricane team at full strength.
I think Ohio State's defense is the only one that I've seen so far that I would put up there with Miami. Their offense,
I would say Ohio State as a collective whole, I would agree with you, but when you talk about position by position, I'm giving slight edge to Miami at every position.
Now let's talk about a few games because
except for maybe cornerback.
I want to jump into some of the games this week, and we'll break all these down on our show later this week. But two teams that I know you and I didn't really buy into anyway, that now I know for you for sure. But first of all, let's not talk about Penn State anymore. I don't want to hear it. They go into UCLA, a team that just got rid of their coach. Their new play caller takes over 2 days before the game. That they
were 0-4.
They were 0-4. It's the first time in 40 years that a top 10 team has lost to a team that was 0-4.
They were 0-4. And
by the way, the Penn State made a game of it, but UCLA brought it to them. And Penn State, I'm actually going to Penn State Saturday.
27-7 in the first half.
And I'm going to the Penn State game this weekend against Northwestern in Penn State. I've never been there. I'm excited to go there. I'm probably going to wear a UCLA jersey just to see if I can fire some fans up. But anyway, I don't want to hear about Penn State anymore. They're done. Texas, a team that played Ohio State game one of the season, and then they played a bunch of nobodies and struggled against a couple of those nobodies. They go into Florida. You and I both have talked about how Florida's defense is legit, but their offense has not been clicking yet. And if Lagway can get it figured out and not turn the ball over, they could be a dangerous team. They have the number one schedule in the country, so they don't get a breather. But this coming weekend, Texas, coming off that loss at Florida, now they got the Red River rivalry and playing Oklahoma. Texas, by the way, and we're not going to make picks today, but Texas is favored in that game by 2.5, which kind of surprised me because Oklahoma's looked pretty damn good this year and have beaten pretty good teams, and Michigan included. But we've got that game this weekend, and the Red River rivalry is always fun because you never, even the underdogs, it seems you get surprised in that game. But
can I tell you Texas's wins this year against who?
They're a bunch of nobodies.
Archie Manning's win, what his wins have been as a collegiate
they have not been against good teams.
San Jose State, UTEP, and
the next one's worse.
And Sam Houston State.
Yeah.
I mean,
nobody's.
And then a team that was a directional school last year who they beat, but he hasn't won a meaningful game at Texas since he's been there.
Yep.
I'm willing to say that he is easily the most rated player maybe since Tony Mandrich. Overrated player in college football history. Right. And I don't know how much of that is his fault, but when you're making $5-6 million a year, you're the highest paid player in the NIL. You have the Manning name behind you. They're trying to
every commercial during the game.
They've been trying to hide him for the last 2 years. Right. It's not that he couldn't. They've been trying to hide him because you see the athleticism.
You see potential. Like he made a touchdown throw in this game that was a seed, but then you see him miss wide open dudes.
His unwillingness to make the right call. He's so timid and not wanting to make the big mistake that he doesn't play free. It looks like he's locked up about 70% of the time when he has to make a throw, and sometimes he'll make it, but the other 7 times he won't. And he is not what was advertised. I thought Texas was going to, because when you look at them up front, they got pushed around by Florida.
They sure did.
They got pushed around all over the place. Both sides of Florida ran the ball on Texas at will.
Dude, the rookie Dallas, I forget his last name. That kid. That was his first game, I believe, too. That freshman was unbelievable. You're right. They manhandled him, but Texas goes right back into another tough one this week, and we'll see if Eli.
I think Texas. I'm done talking about Texas.
That's kind of what I'm saying. Them and Penn State prove something to me.
You're right. And against Oklahoma, I'm not sure. How their favorite.
Oklahoma's defense is going to get after them. We know that. So we're going to see if Manning continues to fight and become more consistent, and improve, or if he's what you just said.
You know which team has the most players in the NFL over the last 20 years?
Texas?
No. Oklahoma.
Wow.
Oklahoma's had more players go to the NFL other than maybe, I think, Notre Dame's going to be in this. Ohio State's going to be in there. Alabama's going to be in there.
Yeah.
But those 4, Texas is somewhere down the list. But Oklahoma, I think, has the second or third most players in the last 20 years. Last 10 years, they might have more. But, for what their record is, was, under when Stoops was there, they were over hyped, I think, because they didn't win the big games. Stoops couldn't win the big game. It'll be interesting to see, because this will be the Red River rivalry will be as big as these teams are going to play.
It's a huge rivalry.
It's just I'm not sure. I can't count on Manning at all.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, and that his schedule now is getting tough. So we'll see if he shows improvement. Here's the game of the weekend, though. And this is a game that involves a team that you are madly in love with, and a team that I think is a lot better.
I
than
already
you
know who
credit.
you're talking about. Yeah, this is going to be a blowout.
Indiana going to Oregon.
Take the over.
Oregon, that's probably a good bet. Oregon coming off a win at Penn State, which now doesn't look that good. I'm not saying that
at the time when they played
in Happy Valley, definitely. I'm not taking too much away, but I'm just saying. Just like when LSU beat Clemson, we thought that was a huge win on the road, and it doesn't look as good now.
Okay,
and I'm saying that Penn State game.
I think Oregon beat Penn State's still going to win some games.
No doubt, no doubt.
Oregon beat
They're going to beat Northwestern.
Oregon beat them twice. You know what I mean by that? Oregon beat them twice. The disappointment and the letdown of this was our biggest game. Going to UCLA. It's going to be nice and sunny out here. We got Snoop Dogg. We got all the Hollywood lights. I'm in Cali, baby. Mm-hmm. They started feeling them. They didn't show up for that game. Well, and that's the reason why Franklin probably
doesn't make it
after the season, because when you're at Penn State is a program that's has a lot of football pride and tradition. When you're not able to win with those players, and their quarterback, by the way, is awful.
I'm with you. I didn't get it last year.
He has the size of an NFL player.
The arm and the size, but he's
all over the place with his accuracy.
Yeah, I'm with you.
He's probably they had him as projected to be the number 1 overall pick. If they did that, that'd be worse than Ryan Leaf.
Well, if you like quarterback play, this Indiana-Oregon game is going to have that, because you've got 2 great quarterbacks in Mendoza and Moore. Mm-hmm. I think Indiana is legit. I'm not saying they're going to go in and beat Oregon. Oregon's 7.5 point favorite right now. We'll see what it is Friday when we make.
Is that all?
That's So I know you think Oregon's going to wear them out. I think Indiana's
going to play their first tough opponent. Illinois. I know you want to sit there and give them credit.
Illinois is a ranked team, and they wore them out. Yeah, they're not Oregon, and there's no doubt about it. And that game was in Indiana, so you're right. This is their first big.
When I said when you're right, when they wore Illinois out, they embarrassed them.
They embarrassed them,
right? But this isn't that team.
Nope. And Oregon's a tough place to play, from what you said.
Oregon is probably top 5 places in college football to play. The fans are right on top of you. When I say right from me to you,
Yep.
Right. When you're sitting down on your benches, they're right over the top of you. If they wanted to sprinkle something on you, they could. If they want to, just spilled my drink, they could. Spilled my drink again. Damn it. Sorry.
Yep.
I hate when that happens. Keep spilling my drink on you.
Well, a few other games this weekend. And again, we'll talk about these later in the week. We'll make our picks later this week. We get NC State going to Notre Dame. NC State coming off whooping Campbell, but now they're obviously going to be stepping up and an opponent there. Ohio State is at Illinois. So Illinois' quarterback coming off a great game this past week. But we'll see what they do against that Ohio State defense. Ohio State, you would think, would take care of business. We mentioned Alabama, Texas.
Alabama, Missouri is going to be a good game.
Going at Missouri will be a good game.
Missouri can throw the ball all
Florida
over the place.
At Texas A&M. Listen, I'm high on Texas A&M. I think Texas A&M is a really good team on both sides of the ball, but Florida is a tough team.
I don't know how Florida's lost as many games as they have.
If their offense has not clicked until this week. If their offense now starts building off that, they're going to be tough. And
they found themselves a running game. Because against Texas, Texas is a pretty stout team up front to stop the run.
Yep.
All right. That was probably the strength of their defense. Yep. And when Florida, that's big boy SEC football, but when Florida decides they want to man up and run the ball, they got some big boys across that board.
Yep. You got Michigan at Southern Cal. Southern Cal's favored in that game by 2.5. I don't get that either. I think Michigan goes in and takes care of business. And then LSU at home against South Carolina. So we'll see if the Gamecocks can build off their win 2 weeks ago against Kentucky. LSU coming off a loss. So we'll see what happens there. But some good games.
I like that game a whole lot better at the beginning of the season.
Well, South Carolina's got the revenge factor there because they got screwed against LSU last year and it cost them going to the playoffs.
South Carolina isn't as good up front on the defensive side as I thought they were going to be.
And they don't run the ball as well as they need to.
Yeah,
I know they started in the second half against Kentucky.
Those are two things that I'm a little disappointed with the way they played. Obviously Sellers has asked to do a whole lot, and he was just a difference maker. And when you come on the scene and you're really kind of making noise like that, it's going to be tough for people to adjust because they really don't know what your strengths and weaknesses are. They've had a whole off season to, kind of figure out how to stop Sellers if they're going to do that. And it'll be interesting to see. But it's hard to say. I want the Gamecocks to win, but I think LSU is the better football
team.
team.
They're a 9.5 point favorite right now.
LSU is?
Yeah. So we'll see where that shakes down later on when we make our picks. Last thing I want to say before we leave, and I've got a lot of Tar Heel friends who I know are hurting right now. I don't know if
two most overrated things in college football. That's the second.
Clemson wears them out and gets back on the winning track. So again, Carolina's just awful. Like I don't like Carolina, and I drank the Kool-Aid that Belichick brought in all these new players, and he's one of the best coaches ever, and I still think he is one of the best coaches ever. But the
fact that Clemson only scored 38 points against Carolina.
Well, they had their backups playing damn near the whole second half.
You knew, the game was over after the first two drives.
Yeah, it was done.
Right? The Tar Heels wanted nothing to do with tackling those guys that could run fast and were big on the other side. They were. This is the way I envision them tackling.
Oh yeah,
right.
The only team that tackles worse than Carolina is UNC Charlotte, who are the worst tackling team I've seen at any level of football.
They just can't catch.
But at least they didn't have the hype and the players to think that you're going to be pretty good.
They just don't have the speed to tackle.
Carolina's got these guys that were transfers and anyway, and then Belichick, the whole thing. You got Drake May that just leaves your program. He's at the Patriots. You should be using Drake to help bring in other guys to the program. And it comes out that Belichick has instructed his staff to do no posts that include anything with the Patriots at all. So Mac Brown put a post up last night of him and Drake May and congratulating, which I thought was pretty funny. He had Belichick playing the game he called a timeout with 1 second left in the game. Like even the ESPN guys were like, what the hell is he doing?
He called 2 timeouts in the last 30 seconds.
What is he doing?
Down 28 points.
Whatever this girlfriend of his is feeding him or doing, it's just something's changed with him. Something is
probably the
I don't
worst
get it.
decision a coach has ever made. Maybe Saban was able to bounce back because he was able to go back into college and reestablish himself as the GOAT. When he went from where was he at LSU to
Michigan State, LSU.
From LSU after winning a championship, going to Miami and just falling flat on his face, you think, okay, well, maybe this guy's not as good a coach as we thought. Then coming back to Alabama and maybe establishing one of the best dynasties we've seen in college football in the last 30 years, with what they were able to do, while he was there. It's just Belichick has destroyed his reputation as the GOAT, because now the only thing we can think about is when he was at Cleveland and got fired.
He's definitely
now we see how he got fired.
Definitely tarnished it. So Tar Heel fans, I feel for you. But gosh, it's going to be a long rest of the season. Big D, thank you for everything today. I know you got to hit the road to produce another podcast here coming up soon today from Mothers over in Park Road Shopping Center. We'll see you later this week. We'll go our picks. By the way, our picks this week, I finally took the lead. You were 5-4. I was 6-3. Both of us lost the game by 0.5 point, by the way. You had Washington by 6.5. They won by 6. I had Cleveland getting 3.5. They won by 4. So I think I might implement one game. We get a hook rule coming this next week, because we would buy the hook if we were really gambling. But thank you guys for joining us. Hope you have a good week. We'll see you later on.